Hello everyone and welcome to This Nintendo Life episode 182. My name is NVZ and I come to you with a sock on my microphone because I'm recording in a different place and I couldn't bring my pop filter with me, so I had to use a sock. And it seems like the sock does cut out some P's like here and there. I think it works pretty well. You know, it's one of those things on a shoestring budget. I was telling Bally of like, you know, maybe I should have told you this years ago because you don't have a pop filter, Bally, and now you also have decided to put a sock over your microphone.
Yeah, but then we felt it kind of sounded okay without it as well, so I've not actually got a sock on right now. But
oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my microphone is supposed to have a pop filter inside it, but who knows?
I think it works for the most part. I don't think I've ever really noticed it popping too much on your end, but hey, hopefully it sounds good. I also am recording on a different computer than I usually do, so hopefully it sounds fine and not too different from what it usually does. But in any case, if there is a little bit of minor change from it, what you expect, that's probably the reason. Anyway, hi, I'm here. I'm MBZ. I host this video game podcast primarily about Nintendo. I'm also joined by Bally. Hi, Bally. How's it going?
It's going well. I'm one of these crowd in the UK who seem to watch like CNN incessantly, following states and counties and results.
Yes,
and
yeah.
The blue and red board and this sort of thing. So that's what I've been doing predominantly the last few days. But
well, it's turned blue, Bally.
It's
so
turned blue.
At least
Biden's over the line. He's done it.
Look, wow, in the fucking hellfire scape of 2020, there is a step forward to some degree. So, yes. Anyway, shout outs to everyone who voted and made the change. That's pretty cool. So
very cool.
Anyway, we got video games to talk about on today's show, and we also have video games to talk about next time, which is why I'm going to tell you, play Mario Sunshine. I mean, would I ever tell anyone to do that? Recommendation? We're going to be doing our Mario Sunshine celebration of Mario, and we'd like your emails, we'd like your thoughts. You can head over to our Discord server and post them there, because we have a Mario 35th anniversary channel, but you can also send them to our email address, Bally, to remind people.
Email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com.
Absolutely. So, that will be next episode. So please get in your thoughts about specific levels of Mario Sunshine, what you think of bad shines and things. Just give me all the hate you have in your heart. Maybe some love too if you really enjoy the game. But you know what? I'm less interested in that. I'm all about dunking on this thing. So we'll see. Cool. Let's get into what we're going to be doing on the show then, Bally. How's it going to crack out today?
For the first segment, we're going to talk about the games that we have been playing. The second segment, we've got some of your emails. And then the third segment, a little bit of a news roundup. There was a short Nintendo Direct Mini, I think it might have been called, although I can never remember the names.
Nintendo Partner Showcase, I believe, is one of the third-party ones.
One of those names that they pull out of a hat.
Yes. Yep.
And also there's a few Nintendo sales figures of a few games and obviously the Switch hardware. So we're just going to have a little chat about that. Yeah,
just a bit of an update, last bit of probably not major news, but like news of any degree from Nintendo for the rest of this year. And unless maybe they show up at the Game Awards, who knows, Bally?
Yeah,
we'll see.
It's Nintendo being like, here's our last news dump, and then, okay, everyone's going to be focusing on these next-gen consoles for the next few months, and then we'll come back strong in 2021, hopefully.
Absolutely. Cool, well, let's kick it off with video games we've been playing. Both of us, as part of this Nintendo Partner Showcase, you know, they announced, hey, there's a demo for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. It's a game that I think we're both a bit skeptical about, just because we don't really like Muso, and we've not really played Warriors games before. It doesn't really seem like our thing. However, this is the Breath of the Wild world, and they're talking about 100 years in the past, and kind of telling the story of the war that happened before everything went to an apocalypse, and Link was in a kind of stasis for 100 years, so it's kind of appetizing from that perspective. And the demo came out and we both played the demo. Bally, how much of it did you play? Did you go through the kind of main story missions? Did you play any of the side missions? Because it kind of cuts you off at a certain point. There's a point where they say, okay, here's a mission with Rivali and one with Urbosa and one with the 4 champions basically around the map. They kind of light up.
And you can't actually play any of those, can you?
You try and click on them and they say, go to the eShop and pre-order the full game.
Yeah, I got up to that point. So yeah, especially 2 long missions really with some cutscenes in between. I felt it was. What side stuff do you mean?
So when you go to the world map, essentially after you've done a mission, it takes you back to the Breath of the Wild, literally the Breath of the Wild map. Same sound effects, same like everything. They're trying to ape this style as hard as possible.
It made me feel very uncomfortable, honestly, but we can get to that.
So on the map they have you like little icons, right? So there's like a little cooking pot, and you click on it, and it's like, oh, do you want to give some of the resources that you got in the last level to help this town area? And it's very like menu based in the sense of like, oh, you just gave some resources, and then it gives you a little text dialogue of like, you helped them, yay, and then it like turns blue and you get some benefit. I don't really know, but yeah, it seems like most of that stuff is just you get stuff from the missions and then you put it in. However, there are side missions. So I did one of them, which was Link goes to a place, you play as just Link, and you have to kill 300 Lizalfos in a amount of time. So they basically give you a time limit, and then you're like, okay, kill 300 of these enemies. And so there is a bit of side quest stuff in there, which I imagine is just more if you want to collect more resources, if you want to go, because the idea is like you're building up your weapons and things like that and leveling up your characters. And I guess you do unlock more moves, or you unlock like longer strings of moves the more levels your character gets, or the more that they do. So that's kind of seems like the progression of the game. But the core kind of missions that you played as well as I did, Bally, they're much more structured in terms of you have objectives to do, and there are like big boss characters to fight against, as well as the kind of hordes of enemies. And what I'm going to say is, as someone who is very skeptical of Muso, never really interested in the gameplay. I remember watching the Giant Bomb Quick Look for Hyrule Warriors, the original, and not even wanting to finish it because I was so bored of it. I actually really enjoyed playing this demo, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it is the Breath of the Wild styling. Maybe it is just the kind of character action fan in me to some degree. I like spectacle. I like stupid shit happening on screen, things blowing up. And there's a lot of stupid shit happening on screen here, right? Like, Link does a giant fucking sword swing that kills like 500 people at once. You're throwing bombs over all the place. Zelda has all of the kind of Sheikah abilities that she can use magnesis and then throw bombs, and then a Guardian comes out and spouts bombs. And Imp is really interesting as a character as well. But yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm being convinced, even though, okay, this is like the type of genre I'm not super into, and the frame rate is kind of garbage, and like even in handheld mode it looks blurry. I don't know how to reconcile the fact that I think I had fun with this thing. It's weird.
Yeah, the kind of like positives in terms of the Breath of the Wild setting and that kind of thing. That's what kind of made me pick up the demo, like let alone even like try the game necessarily.
Yeah.
And because I'm very skeptical about Muso games, I'm really not into the whole let's attack hordes of enemies kind of thing generally. And I also bounced off stuff when I played the Bayonetta 2 demo and that sort of thing. It's just not, I know they're kind of
you can't compare like perfection in combat to like the spamminess of this game, but
like character action kind of thing, I'm just not there necessarily. And I found the cutscenes and all that mildly interesting. As
they're kind of like, it's one of those things, right, where I don't think Breath of the Wild even has that good cutscenes, like even the original game.
Oh, really? Well, I thought they were like on a par or maybe even subpar. I mean, neither of them are that great, to be honest. I don't think the voice acting is particularly good. There's all this time travel story going on that I'm a bit like,
of course, this is why you really dislike it, Bally. Here's the core of it. It's because the game starts off with like, so the idea basically is it's all in the past, and you're playing 100 years before, but they have this conceit at the beginning of the demo where it shows you a tiny little baby guardian who's now become everyone's favorite thing online. I don't know, it's in Zelda's room, and then for some reason it just opens a time portal and jumps through the time portal, and then you're back in 100 years ago.
Yeah. I'm all up for like a prequel, but there's something about like doing a prequel on top of having this time travel. Maybe that story will go somewhere cool, and maybe I'm prejudging it.
I mean, I think it's just like a narrative conceit to get us into the world almost, instead of just like, and you're there, and you're 100 years ago. It's almost like a framing device to be like, you remember what happened in the Breath of the Wild game. Here's kind of a narrative way for us to get into it. Maybe it will affect it narratively, and there will be repercussions of maybe the idea being that this is an alternate timeline and maybe they can save Hyrule, as opposed to it just being a bummer of an ending where everyone dies and the world is taken over. But who knows? I don't know where it's going.
So I wasn't really impressed by that whole setting, honestly. And then once the gameplay starts, you're playing as Link, and you're going through and you're in Hyrule Field, and I just found it incredibly dull. Like, I was very bored after literally about 10 minutes. I was like, I'm just swinging my sword, I'm doing spin attacks, I'm doing all these things like I'm doing in Breath of the Wild, but not really. It's all fake and all just, and that I think I found that all that stuff just very jarring. It's like, Breath of the Wild is obviously my favorite game of all time, and aping all of these moves, I'm just like, you're killing it. You're destroying Breath of the Wild. Stop touching my baby, sort of thing. And I think that combined with the gameplay feeling very rote and very dull, and then I was like, okay, now I'm playing as Impa, now I'm playing as Zelda, and they were like, they refreshed the game for like another 5 minutes for me personally, maybe. And sure, we got to more cutscenes and more stuff was happening, and then it was just very boring. I did not enjoy it at all, really, and I was intrigued. I wanted to try it. People were selling this as like, there's going to be a Breath of the Wild trilogy, and this is the first, and it's like, no, I hate that narrative. I hate it so much. So no, it's and like we were saying about the menus where it is the Breath of the Wild map, it's like, I mean, it's just some very fancy labeling on a lot of this stuff, and it really makes my skin crawl a bit, just the idea that they're aping Breath of the Wild so much with this game, because gameplay wise, it's so far from reality that it feels as a package very jarring, even in a demo. So yeah, I'm not a happy camper over here.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I think because I went into it with the idea that like, this isn't going to be an open world that you explore. It isn't going to be the same polish and like sheen that you expect from Nintendo. It's a fucking Koei Tecmo game, right? Like, you expect frame rate drops. You expect just like a bit of jank animation. You kind of come to, in some degrees, like, people enjoy those games for those aspects, right? There are people out there who think Deadly Premonition is a good video game, right? There are some people for whom the experience that they get from a game is very different from others, and there are different things they take from it. And people who like Warriors games certainly like a certain thing, and I kind of get it in some senses. There is, I think, to some degree, right? Like, there is a idea of just having a mindless thing to do that is satisfying and looks cool and has kind of this Zelda bells and whistles around it, that I can see myself just sitting there with a podcast over Christmas, just smashing some Lizalfos in the face and doing some cool moves. And especially with Impa, I think Impa is probably the most interesting character out of the bunch of them, because her moves revolve around basically setting this symbol on enemies, and then that symbol creates duplicates for Impa, and you try and build up as many duplicates as you can. And then once you have like a ton of them, you're just like slicing through people and just destroying enemies. And I think the one thing that kind of made this less of a smash fest for me was the boss characters, right? Because you fight bigger moblins, or you fight at one point a guardian, and those fights and the things that they require of you, they demand of you, is a bit more than I expected, because I did expect the whole thing to be very mashy and not really thinking about stuff, but I did have to kind of, dodge out the way and, use some different moves on those enemies. And I can only imagine that as the game goes on, that stuff becomes more tricky and more difficult and more interesting boss patterns. So I think because I was expecting a certain thing and it maybe elevated it above what I thought I was getting, that's maybe where I'm coming more positive on it overall. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed it a lot, and I don't know that I will pick it up straight away necessarily, because it feels like there's a lot coming out and there's a lot I want to play.
It's very expensive. It's it's top tier. Like,
it is, yeah. It's like a full like 42 quid or whatever if I was to get it here. And yeah, maybe I kind of want to wait for reviews and see what people say, because this is the kind of series where people do get burnt out quite quickly on them, and all the missions I feel will eventually kind of blend together and not really feel that distinct. But again, like, it's one of those games where the idea of it is to kind of turn off your brain and just see pretty lights and shiny objects and, weird animations going on.
I enjoy that game state where you just tune out and play something, but for me right now, that game is probably, Hades or like Forza Horizon.
The thing is with Hades is I can't tune out Hades because there's so much like dialogue going on from gods. And
there's large play sections between dialogue things, so like you can tune out for the most part. I
for a little bit. I don't know that it's weird, man, because like 65 hours into that game, I still have runs where I sit there with the music on and my headphones in and just don't do anything else. I think that's the mark of a fucking phenomenal game.
It's my tune-out game at least, so there we go. But
I get what you mean because I have played it with stuff in the background, but I do find with Hades that like my brain tends to not really listen to what's going on in the background because there's a lot of focus in that game, a lot of concentration. But anyway, we're talking about Hyrule Warriors, and yeah, I do want to see reviews. I'm kind of just waiting for that and see how it goes and how long the story is and things like that. Because it is one of those like over Christmas games at some point where I'm thinking, you know what, I just want to sit here by the fire and, hit some people. So we'll see. I'm definitely much more positive than Bally is, who's clearly a hater. I'm going to say this game better than Mario Sunshine. That's my prediction for Metacritic.
It doesn't help that it's coming out kind of the day after the PlayStation 5, right? Or
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. But you know what? I do think that the Nintendo audience is very different. Totally. People who are going to buy Hyrule Warriors are not the kind of people who necessarily are going to buy a PlayStation 5 day one, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's distinct enough audiences. But anyway, that's Hyrule Warriors demo. You can check it out. It's on the eShop for free. And if you're skeptical, I'd say give it a go because there's a 50-50 chance. Either you'll be Bally or either you'll be me. And you don't know which way you'll fall until you try it. So I recommend checking it out.
Whether you like Breath of the Wild or not doesn't really relate to that question.
Well, I think it does, actually. I really do think it does because there is something aesthetically about it and something about the idea of just seeing more of these characters that for some people is going to be very appealing. And I've definitely heard that sentiment echoed in a few places. But yeah, I guess it depends on your investment in the champions and their story and how much you care seeing more of them and that type of thing.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I am mildly interested in that aspect, and obviously the demo never kind of gets that far. So like, there's probably cool stuff in the game if I ever played the full game that I'd be like, oh, okay, that is interesting, and like knowing what just from trailers, seeing some of the gameplay later on looks more interesting than perhaps what they showed in the demo.
Yeah, I mean, just those fucking guarded divine beasts just rampaging around as them. That looks pretty fun. So seems like there's variety, and I think we didn't really mention it, but the mission design is it's interesting. One of the missions, which I think you got a bit frustrated with, was like, hey, you have to run away from this guardian, and then you have to kind of get the guardian to follow you. You're like doing this whole thing of reactivating old guardians so that they laser the guardian that's running around. That it feels like the mission design of the main missions actually has a lot more going on versus the side stuff I did, which was literally, here are 300 Lizalfos, you have 6 minutes to kill them all, which is that's the kind of stuff where I'm actually that is literally mindless. That is literally what you're saying, which is like just boring mashing through regular enemies. But I do think the main missions at least have the bosses and the other things and kind of like control points to mix it up. And I hope that the mission design stays interesting throughout and doesn't kind of fall back into the similar loops. But inevitably, it's one of those games.
Hold out on that one. But
no, definitely not. But anyway.
Cool. Yeah. So I've also been playing a little game called Carto that you kind of put on my radar, MBZ.
So it was showed up on this month's Game Pass releases, and it's also on Switch. It came out kind of out of nowhere, and I watched a review from Nintendo World Report from Neil Ronahan over there, who gave it a very glowing review, gave it a 9, I believe, and yeah, I was like, oh, this seems really cool. And then I told Bally about it, and Bally's like, sure, this seems neat. I played it and decided, I'm kind of done. This is kind of boring. And then Bally was like, I love this. So we're getting the opposite of Hyrule Warriors in this situation. I might go back to Carto. Sell me on Carto, Bally. Sell me that it changes. Sell me that it does something different than what I had seen, which is your character who's kind of slow and moving around, and it was too slow for me, I think.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you do get something that speeds up your character, which I mentioned. Arguably, you get that too late for your liking.
Yes.
So this game, Carto, is by a Taiwanese studio actually called Sunhead Games.
Okay.
And when I looked it up, I think their only previous game was a game called A Ride into the Mountains, which is a mobile game.
Never heard of it.
Android. So there's that. But this is very cute. So if you it's a puzzle RPG, and if you imagine taking chunks of a map and then rotating and moving them around to manipulate the world, that's ultimately how you do things and achieve things in this game. So we mentioned a puzzle very similar to this in The Last Campfire, or in the final dungeon of Skyward Sword, for example. There's a very similar puzzle, but this game essentially builds almost an entire game around that idea.
So the basic concept is that you're this little character, little girl, I guess. I can't remember.
Yeah, you play as Carto, who's a little girl.
Yes, and basically you are on this world, this overworld, which has like, I don't know, you start out in kind of this grassy area. It's like an island essentially.
Yeah.
And you press the X button and that lets you open up your map. And what happens then is that the screen zooms out to an overhead view of the entire island. But each of the island, the whole island is made up of individual pieces. And so you can take these pieces and move them around and then stick them somewhere else, and it changes the shape of the island, and then you zoom back in and the island has changed essentially. So you are basically making the space as you go and kind of finding new areas and unlocking new spaces through like interesting puzzles. So one of them was like, okay, you need this person is in the middle of the forest, and you're like, okay, I put all the forest pieces together and they weren't appearing, and then I was like, oh, I need to put each of the forest pieces around a blank central area, and then once all of those are done, a new tile appears out of nowhere, and it's like that's the center of the forest because you created the kind of square around it, and it's kind of created a new path for you to go down.
And the tiles link up in a very specific way. So if you've ever played a board game called Carcassonne, are you aware of Carcassonne, MBZ?
I've heard of it. Now I'm realizing this is why you like it, because it's like a board game you like.
I mean, it's linked, I guess. But so in Carcassonne, you can only link puzzle pieces specifically, like a road has to match a road, and a field has to match a field, forest, river, etc. This game is the same. So pieces have to link up with specific type of land, whether it's a forest or on, and each piece has 4 sides, and each side has to match the space that it's moving into in order for it to interlock.
And like some of the sides are water, so like a water side can't match with a land side.
Right, exactly. So yeah, as you said, sometimes new chunks of map appear by moving map tiles, but the more common way of gaining more map tiles is you pick them up in the RPG-like world. And the RPG-like world itself is kind of cool. Like it's you're moving around, you're talking to people, there's little towns and this, that, and the other. It all feels quite sparse. It's not like there's much density in the number of houses and buildings to visit. And you keep moving quite in a fast pace through different areas because obviously all these little mini worlds are made up of tiles. And in order to keep the game fresh, they have to obviously keep introducing you to new tile pieces and tile sets. But I actually thought a lot of the writing felt very akin to a game like Golf Story, actually. Like it's kind of like funny and casual, but also just has like some nice undertones at the same time. Like I think that's on top of the fact that a lot of the pacing felt a little bit like Golf Story, where Golf Story is like you're having these little chats here and there, but then at the same time you're playing golf. Whereas this game, it's like you're having chats here and there, but at the same time you're working out puzzles using the landmass essentially. So that pacing felt very similar to me with the whole sort of RPG kind of thing.
So you say RPG, right? Does this change later on? Because it doesn't seem like there's no fighting of enemies, there's no leveling up. It doesn't seem very RPG-like to me.
There's no fighting of enemies in Golf Story. It's not an RPG. I think
your
definition of RPG
do level up
in
No, I think what I'm kind of getting at is that this is much more of an adventure game because you are talking to people and figuring out like obscure puzzles. Like it doesn't have the trappings of a quote-unquote RPG, whereas Golf Story definitely has like elements of improving your level and things like that, doesn't it? Like I seem to remember that you do improve like statistically in some way.
True, but I mean, adventure game is almost overlapped with RPG in so many ways, and I don't want to get into a debate about definition.
Yeah, I don't think so. Obviously, genres are dumb, and I think all genres are dumb, but I don't think that it's accurate to call this an RPG because you'd give people the wrong idea of saying it's an RPG. It's much more of a adventure style game. It's much more of a more classic like Grim Fandango-esque.
I would personally associate this style of game with RPG because my impression of RPGs and JRPGs is like going town to town, speaking to people, unlocking this, doing that. Whether there's a level system, battle system, golf tournaments or not, I associate going town to town as crucial part of like an RPG. So that in that sense, for me,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You haven't played enough adventure games though to kind of make that distinction, and neither have I. But I've definitely like.
I think RPG has overtaken the definition of adventure game just because they're so. Adventure game is quite a dated term for what we've described in this game.
It is a dated term, but like that's exactly kind of what Carto is doing in some senses, because I would call it more of just a puzzle adventure game, right? Like that's kind of what it is, because you aren't fighting anything, you're not leveling up.
But I personally associate going town to town as an RPG. You're role playing as Carto.
All right, I mean that's your personal definition. That's totally okay. I just don't want to give people the wrong idea. When you say RPG, to me that means a very specific thing, and that's totally not from like traditional definition of what RPG is. That's not what it is. It's just so that people understand that's not what you're going to be doing. You're not leveling up and fighting enemies and things like that. Yeah.
Sure, but some of the stronger like puzzles, and I do think they do a good job of constantly mixing up the puzzles. So it's not just a case of move map piece here, do that, and another piece appears. While they repeat that idea a few times, and they do kind of drop hints like, oh, and this needs to appear, or there used to be a thing around that corner. If only that river bend had done X, and then you kind of bend the river in a certain way, and another river part appears. While they do that a lot, there's more mechanics than that. So, for example, in the desert area, there's like a chest you come across, and on the chest it just says like 90 minus 180 plus 360, and I'm like, what is this talking about? And I thought it was like talking about map coordinates, and I'm like looking around the map, and then I'm realizing, right, these are degrees. So what is it asking me to do? I pick up the tile piece and I rotate it right 90, then back 180 anti-clockwise, and so on, and then you put the piece down, go into the world, and the treasure chest is opened, and it's like,
so you basically just have to pick it up and do each of those motions in order, and then unlock something.
Exactly. Or
clever. Another
cool thing is there's a fishing competition, and you have to make the lake that the fishing competition takes part on. And then this kid says to you, oh, here's a list of the fish that you can catch in this fishing competition. And there's like 4 of them, and they're all these specific shapes. And then you realize, I need to change the shape of the lake in order to catch the relevant fish. So you essentially change the lake 4 different times to like make the 4 different fish, catch the 4 different fish, and then you win the fishing competition and move on, so on. So that's like a really cool one as well. And then a really dumb like a little mini game thing that made me like laugh out loud because I thought it was really funny was there's like this little mini game where you're in this house and the guy says, oh, would you mind helping me move some boxes before like moving on? So have you ever seen the puzzle where you have a stack of 3 things and you have to move them all from left to right? But you can never put a smaller one. You can never put a large one on top of a small one.
Yeah, I've seen that type of puzzle before. Yeah, definitely.
Right. So you do that puzzle, and it takes a while. And I'm thinking, well, this is very different to the rest of this game. I'm actually in a single tile piece, moving like these boxes to do this puzzle. And then you speak to the guy, he's like, oh, thanks very much. Did you get the other one in the back room? And you go to the back room, and the room is like stacked to the ceiling with these boxes, and you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna be here for ages doing this puzzle, like crazy, man. And then you're like, wait a minute, and then you zoom out to your puzzle tile map, and then you just move the entire stack to the right side of the house, put it down again, and talk to him, and he's like, wow, you did that so quickly, well done. And I'm like, this is great. Like, stuff like that made me really think this game is fantastic. And those puzzles I just gave as examples maybe aren't quite frequent enough for what I would have personally liked a bit more. And there's a lot more shifting map tiles, working out where X goes Y, and this
slowly walking places as you try and figure out why the fucking piece that you need isn't there. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the walking speed is absolutely fine, and the worlds are very small actually. Like,
I think it is fine. I think it's just like when I got stuck and I didn't know. Like I was missing a piece clearly, and I had no idea where the hell it was, and I was just wandering around aimlessly, and I couldn't figure it out. That's the kind of point at which I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like I'm going to get my head stuck against... If this is happening this early on in the game, I just felt like it was going to keep happening, and I wasn't down for that, really.
I banged my head up against a number of puzzles in the game, and
And as we all know, you will continue to do this because you're very stubborn when it comes to
yes,
that
but
type
my
of stuff.
threshold for puzzle games is getting worse and worse the more puzzle games I play.
Totally. Yeah.
But this one was different. Like, I banged my head up against the wall, and I worked out the puzzle in every single time, bar like 2 or 3 in the entire game. And I will admit that the 2 or 3 I looked up, even once I looked them up, I was like, that makes no sense. I don't even understand how that was even meant to work, or what. I think I also did the bad thing of looking up a guide that doesn't even tell you like the flavor text of how to get there. It was just kind of, here's the answer. So I'd almost put in the answer just to progress the game, not knowing how to get to the answer. So that happened to me like 2 or 3 times. But by and large, the puzzles are fantastic, and you just have to like, it's that lateral thinking of like stepping back, thinking, wait, if it's telling me this, then surely I can do that. And I could give more examples of like cool little things it does, but I've already spoiled like 3 cool puzzles, so I don't want to talk anymore. And it's only like a 7-8 hour game maybe, and there's like 10 chapters. There's 3, 4, 5 areas, and a kind of like go-between area that you constantly go back to, and it's just super cute. It's super charming. I really like the writing, like I said, the meaning of the world and the justification for why Carto has the power to move these puzzle pieces about is a bit crap, to be honest. It's not good in that sense.
I mean,
but there's some nice writing, and by the end of the game, the puzzle pieces themselves are like awkward Tetris-shaped style large things that are even harder to like manipulate and do things with, but it was still like really enticing and enjoyable, and I really like this. It felt so fresh. Like, it's just such a fresh idea. I know we've mentioned this ideas in other puzzle games, but to make a whole game out of that one idea, I just think was fantastic. And I was very impressed overall. And yeah, it was obviously on the Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it caught my eye in the first place, is because it was a very unique idea. And yeah, no, that stuff sounds really, really cool and clever. I don't know if, there's so many things coming out at this point in time. And I think if I've bounced off it that early, I don't know. Maybe
there's some frustrating things in there that if you already were frustrated after the first couple of hours, there's stuff more frustrating than that. Like, it doesn't get easier in that sense. You have to be like ready to like think, okay, right, outside the box, this sort of thing. But yeah. If you do fancy picking up again, MBZ, I think you could have a good time with certain aspects. I particularly loved that desert area. There wasn't a single puzzle that I got completely stumped on. And it was just a series of incredibly satisfying puzzles, like the chest I mentioned. Like, it was just, and there was maybe like an hour and a half of gameplay just in that one desert section. I was like, this is fantastic. And I thought the area before that and after that weren't quite as strong as that middle desert area. So yeah,
okay,
highly recommend Carto. I don't know how much it is on Switch, but I
believe it's £18 on Switch, $17.99.
Yeah, I mean,
so
I love this game a lot. That's kind of steep, honestly.
I mean, it depends on person to person, right? Like,
totally.
As we say, the price is just such a malleable thing.
Get it on your watch list, your wish list. Have a look, or obviously if you have access to Game Pass, give it a whirl on that.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll go on sale at some point in the future.
So yeah, Carto, very cool little game.
Very good, excellent. Cool. I've not played a huge amount else. I'm playing Return of the Obra Dinn at the moment, but I would like to finish that before I kind of go in deep on it and kind of talk about all its aspects. So I will finish that for next time. However, I'm still playing Hades, Bally. I think last time we talked Hades, I had 8 wins. I finished the credits. I got to credits. I did my 10 wins. I'm now on 22 clears of Hades. I finished it
in the last 2 weeks.
Well, I think the last time we talked about it was like 2 shows ago, right?
Yeah,
so it's been a month probably or so at this point. So I have beaten the game on every single mirror upgrade. So on the mirror you can change it to like the alternative versions. So one of them, instead of Death Defy, where you get 3 lives, is Stubborn Defiance, where you only get 1, but it's every single room. So if you die in a room, it'll just come back to the next room. And all of those ones, I've beaten it on every single aspect of the mirror. I have beaten it on every single Pact of Punishment. The Pact of Punishment is like different stipulations. So one of them is as you play through, the shop costs 40% more. So your upgrades, when you're buying them, lot more gold that you have to pay for them. One of them is called Extreme Measures, which increases the difficulty of boss fights. And there's another thing called Extreme Measures 4, where you can buy it and it increases the difficulty of the final boss fight, like it wasn't hard enough already. And so that's one of them. One of them is like Hard Labor, which increases the amount of damage enemies do. And so the idea is, like in the post game of this, is you get rewarded with Titan's Blood and Ambrosia and Diamonds for beating the game on higher and higher heat levels, essentially. So the more additions of this pact of punishment that you add to your run, the harder it gets, obviously, but also the more rewards that you can then unlock, because, you know, you need Titan's Blood to upgrade your weapons. You need Ambrosia to give to characters once you've got their relationship further enough. And then Diamonds are kind of used for lots of different things. Like, at this point in time, I primarily have them for unlocking music tracks, so they're kind of like the least important things, but you do use them to get really important upgrades that help you. Like, every time you get gems, you then get extra money. Every time you get darkness, you get +5 life to your total life count, stuff like that, that is permanent, and obviously just makes the game a lot more playable and easier over time. So yeah, I think I have beaten the game with every weapon, I think 4 or 5 times each at this point, maybe 3 times on a few. I think the bow is 3 times and the fists are a few times as well. But I just cannot fucking stop playing Hades. It is getting ridiculous. And as I mentioned, like there are times where I will just sit there after work. It's like a really good after work guy. I finish work and I pick up my Switch and I'm like, start a run, let's go through it. And like in about half an hour, I'm at the end, and either I win or I lose, and then I just start a new one, and then I start going again. I'm like, I need to put this down. I need to go eat. I need to do something else. I can't just play Hades the rest of my life. But like, there is something about it that is, I think, part of the reason, right? And I think we've mentioned this, but I think it really is important, is how quickly it takes to clear a room. Because clearing a room, most of the time, less than a minute, right? It is incredibly fast. And so you clear it, you get your item, next room. You clear it, you get your item, next room. There is a real page turner feeling that Hades gives you because of the speed at which you can clear enemies out and the speed at which you can complete rooms. It's like the only breath that you really take is after finishing a boss. You have the room where you heal yourself, you change out your keepsake, and then you go to the next room, and the next room is kind of like, oh, it's a bit of a quiet room. You just kind of like looking around, waiting to get on the boat if you're in Asphodel, or waiting to go into the next area in Elysium, and it has a little viewing spot at each of those parts as well. That's the one moment usually through a run where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to stop, I'm going to stop at one of these spots, because if I make that decision at Asphodel to get on that boat, I'm not stopping playing until I've got to Lerny and his big skull head. Because there is a compulsion that just drags you through it, especially just because you're unlocking and finding new things constantly. I'm currently trying to get every single legendary boon and every single duo boon in the game, and it's really nice because the codex actually shows you, okay, these are the different boons you need in order to get the duo boon to appear. And so like I'm starting a lot of runs with Ares at the moment because the only duo boons I have left are his ones. He has a ton of them, and so I'm kind of going through those and ticking them off the list. And I think it is really that idea of, I still have stuff to do, and every time I go through, there's still story progress being made, whether it is reuniting Orpheus and Eurydice, or trying to help Sisyphus out, or any of these characters who have continuing, ongoing narratives. Like, there's romance options with Thanatos and with Dusa and with Meg, and I've only just kind of done a couple of those at this point. It feels endless, even though, like, obviously gameplay-wise it is, but narratively it just keeps on giving, like, constant drip feed of stuff. And I don't know, I feel like so I've heard there is the final, like, epilogue thing, final big quest thing, and I think that's kind of like what I'm aiming for at the moment. It's like, when I'm done with that, I feel I can probably put Hades to bed. But it is one of those games, honestly, like Overwatch, where I can see myself just playing Hades forever. Like, it is so fucking mechanically satisfying on a very visceral base level that I can see myself just playing this game forever. It's astonishingly good, and I cannot stop.
I think what it does really well is that the game can be enjoyed on so many levels. So I'm obviously playing it on a very different level to what you are right now, where I'm going for like the 10 wins right now. I'm trying to beat it with like all the different weapons, get my 10 wins. I'm on 6 wins run successful runs currently. So like that's kind of like my little goal, I guess, before like PlayStation 5 comes out. But
Yeah,
the fact that you can play it on this next level of extra narrative stuff, extra mechanical stuff, getting all the like the duo boons, etc. But then
all the legendary weapons, oh my goodness, some of those legendary weapons are so much fun. Holy shit.
But likewise, there's still loads of podcasters I listen to where they're still trying to get that first clear. They're still enjoying that process. So that you
it's totally valid to like clear the game once and say you're done with it, right? Like I can see that.
So you can do I want to clear it once, or I want to clear it 10 times, get like, I guess I'm guessing 10 times is like the main story, as it were, and credits.
Yeah, clearing it 10 times is like a good place to stop because you get credits, and there's definitely the door is open for more stuff very clearly. But yeah, it's a nice wrap up to kind of the main narrative arc of the game.
But then you're like onto the whole min-maxing it kind of level of like doing.
Yeah, I would say like I'm where the game begins really. If you're talking about it for people who are really playing it that way, and yeah, going for like the final true ending stuff.
But it speaks to how good the game is that it can be enjoyed on all those different levels. And
100%.
I still haven't really heard of anyone getting up to Megara and being like, I'm done with this game. I can't play anymore, you know, like so many people feel the compulsion to like do another run, get better, get back to that boss, try a different weapon, improve on something, and just keep going. And I think that's what's very cool about it. Even if I'm not enjoying it on the same level that you're quite on, I'm still having a really good time.
Yeah, I think this is very similar with Celeste for us, right? Where like you really loved Celeste by just playing through the main story, and I was like, I'm going to do these fucking sadistic C-sides because I love this game that much, you know? I mean, that's kind of where I am with Hades.
With Celeste, I feel more compelled to do the B-sides and C-sides than I think I will after I do 10 runs in this game. So I think I would personally give Celeste more credit in that sense. However, I do agree that Celeste is a good comparison where it can be enjoyed on like lots of different levels.
100%, yeah.
And I think that speaks to like a good, successful modern game. It's like a very modern idea that's how you make a cool, successful game.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder how you'll feel once you're finished, because so after my first run, I was like, how am I going to beat this game 9 more times? What the hell, man?
I mean, that's how I felt as well.
Right. And then I did it, and then I was like, all right, I'll do another one. And I was like, all right, I'll do another one. All right, go on then. I got to see these I got to see all these legendary weapons.
So you didn't even you didn't intend to go past 10. You just kept.
I didn't. No, absolutely not. Like I intended to hit credits and be like, okay, let's move on. Let's play something else. But every time I think about picking up another game, I'm like, but I could be playing Hades, man. You know, I just enjoy it on a really fundamental level that is kind of unlike anything in recent times. So
if people are wondering why our pool of games that we're going to talk about for Game of the Year is so reduced on MBZ's side, it's blame Hades.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But yes, I think I'm 65 hours in. Probably going to hit about 100 before I'm done with it. We'll see. But yes.
I think I'm on like 40 to 45, and that's just to get my six clears. I think I've done 39 runs, so I guess I'll be I guess I'll be closer to 39 hours because my runs obviously take like much longer than yours, so about a bit under an hour.
Yes, but the way Bally plays is much more defensive and turtly than me, I think.
But there's all the chit chat in between runs that I'm sure adds time as well. So I'm sure I'm a bit past 40, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure, totally. Cool. Bally, you, for the first time ever, I think, I went onto my friends list and it's like, Bally is playing the Super Nintendo Online. And like, what the fuck? He never does that. Why is he playing this? And I was like, yes, they added Donkey Kong Country 2 to it. That's why.
Donkey Kong Country 2.
Tell me about Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kongquest, Bally.
Best name ever.
Full name of it. Yes,
I've been intending to play DKC2 for quite a while because I was a big fan of DKC1 and played it for the first time. I played it for the first time on Wii U, actually. It was one of those games I just like, I need to play this game, and picked it up. I really enjoyed it. DKC1 is a hard game, but like this is multiple levels harder than that game. Tropical Freeze is also a very hard game, but I definitely felt its difficulty was a ton more fair than what this game goes for. So like Tropical Freeze has the luxury of it's a modern game. So while it does have lives, each level is treated as an invisible save point. If you game over, you go back to the start of the level. In DKC Trilogy, obviously you go back to the last actual save point.
Is it Cranky Kong who's your save person at this point in the game? I don't remember who it is.
It's more complicated. There's multiple people you can save with, and then once you save with someone, there's also like these collectible coins that you can spend coins to save the goddamn game, which I just hate so much as a mechanic.
Oh my god, that sounds like who decided that was a good idea?
So
Jesus.
I absolutely hate that about the game. I obviously had the luxury of playing with save states and the rewind function, and I used both of them a lot. And I honestly think the unfairness mainly comes from everything else that's not to do with the save points. And what I mean by that is, it feels like everything just comes at you a bit faster in this game. So obviously, like the first game, you play as essentially a very large sprite on the screen. Like there is not much distance between you and the invisibility of beyond your screen, you know.
It's quite zoomed in, right?
Right.
Like
And
the perspective.
so yeah, unlike, say, a modern game like Tropical Freeze, where the camera is zoomed out a bit, even when it's at its harshest of difficulty in Tropical Freeze, you can see stuff coming. You know how to prepare. I feel like so many of my deaths in this game were just so unfair because stuff was just charging at me from the off screen and killing me before I could even react. And I just think stuff like that is unbelievably unfair. And on top of that, just the level design is incredibly tough. Like, for example, the very first water level in the whole game, the water changes between water and lava, and you can't be in the lava without you will die instantly. And there's just a ton of like speed running racing style levels. Like one of the hardest levels in the game is near the end, and you're playing as the parrot, and you're racing against this other parrot through this horrendous maze of brambles and horrendousness.
Don't get me started on those fucking brambles. So I've never played DKC2, right? Yeah, but everyone praises it all the time, and every time I hear that, I'm like, have you played that game recently? Because I remember watching Nintendo Capri Sun play through all the DKC games, and DKC2 by far was the one where I was watching it, I'm like, this fucking sucks. Like, the level design in so much of it is garbo. Like, there's the level where you're the wasp and you're going through all those fucking bramble mazes, and it's not clear at all where you need to go. Like, it is a mess of a maze.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out where the fuck anything is. There's a stupid spider where you have to shoot webs mid-air and like jump on the webs. Like, there's so much horrible level design across DKC2 that I do not understand people who think this is the best Donkey Kong Country game.
Yeah.
Because to me, it is by far the worst one I've seen. From you know, just from a perspective of level design, just watching it, right? Because I do know that these games play well, because I think the first game plays incredibly well. It's one of the best playing Super Nintendo games, honestly. Feels great, but that stuff is just, for me, unforgivable.
Yeah, and like out of the four that I've played, it is by far and away the worst. And honestly, I think some of the weaker level design they really go for the verticality in so many of the levels, and you barely have that in the first game. And I actually think that's a strength of the first game, is going left to right in 2D platformers is underrated. Let's just do it a bit more, honestly. Verticality in this game, where you can fall down horrendously large spaces and distances, and I think the array of critters you play as, like the snake, is kind of cool because we've got a spring, but then near the end of the game, you're playing some level as the snake, where you're chasing, like, you're running away from like rising acid, and one of the jumps that the snake has is like a charged jump. I think the idea of having a charged jump combined with a vertical level where you're running away from acid that is rising up the level is the most horrible thing I've felt like in a 2D.
It sounds like some Castlevania levels to me, you know, like walking up those stairs as you have like the screen scrolling with you. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's rough stuff.
There's like, I actually thought the spider was kind of cool, where you are like creating platforms and jumping on them. But I think once they add the kind of speedrun element, which they seem to do for every single element in this game, it loses a lot of the fun. Whereas when you're doing the more slow paced level, where you're creating the platforms, getting over gaps, avoiding wasps and stuff, that's kind of fun. Like, that mixed up the gameplay. I enjoyed that. You got Rambi in there, you got the parrot, like I said. So like, they are mixing up the gameplay. That stuff is good. The the minecart levels are still there, but they're now like this horror themed roller coaster. And that was another thing I just wasn't a big fan of with this game, was like the theming of the levels is just weird. And like, I really like just the basic jungle traditional Aztec style levels in the kind of the original Donkey Kong Country that you see repeated a lot more in like Returns and Tropical Freeze. And this game
you're telling me you prefer the vanilla level design? I'm truly shocked.
I prefer the vanilla version. In this game, the first world is based on the pirate ship, where the final world is of the previous game, which that's cool in and of itself. But then you go into...
it's kind of like a neat kind of narrative, continuance to some degree.
The narrative does like continue on, and obviously, if you don't know, like Donkey Kong is the sort of Peach princess locked away in a castle person in this game, which is fun.
Right, but yeah, we haven't mentioned this, right? Because this is the game where you play as Diddy and Dixie together.
Diddy and Dixie, right.
Do you think that like some of this vertical level design is there because of Dixie's hairspin trick? Because she kind of has that going up thing that's going on?
I mean, you think she has a going up thing because that's what she has in Tropical Freeze. In this game,
wait, does she not have that here?
In this game, it's essentially a glide. She spins around, and it's a bit like Diddy Kong's glide in those Return games in Tropical Freeze. So,
gotcha, right.
She doesn't have that extra essential double jump, which it basically is in Tropical
Does Diddy
Freeze.
have any power in this game, or is he just like the Donkey Kong of this game?
He's just vanilla. I mean... He's like
a smaller hitbox at least. Like, there's one thing going for him is he's not like his dad. He does have
True, but then when you have a game with Dixie and Diddy, it feels near pointless in a way. Like Dixie's better in every way. So it's cool having Dixie. I think the variety of characters is fun, but like I was saying, the worlds, there's a lot of Halloween themed worlds with like these forests and this like skull roller coasters based in this weird theme park, which is like this dark horror show kind of theme park, and creepy forests and like ghostly towers and things, and I'm just like, this is just doesn't feel very Donkey Kong to me. I don't like this, on top of the fact that this is just an unbelievably hard game. And you know, I would give this game a horrendous like score if I wasn't able to play with like save states and rewind feature. Even with those, there were moments that I was like tearing my hair out. Like, this is so hard, and I don't mind the hard game. I hate unfair hardness. Like, it was just so unfair. It was like, you kidding me, game? So yeah, everyone kept saying, "Oh, Donkey Kong Country 2 is so much better than the first game." I was like, okay.
I think there are a few people on Twitter like replying to you, being like, "Oh yeah, I love that game. That game's great."
Have you played this game the last decade?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I think the music is very good. Like the first game, it's a great score. I think I think the variety of different types of things you're doing is cool. Just some of them are so unfair, and that camera is so zoomed in, and it's so brutally hard that I'm not a big fan of this game, as you might be able to tell.
Mm-hmm.
I want my DKC 1 back. I want my Tropical Freeze back. Give those to me. They are so much better than this game. I will try 3 at some point. I'm sure that will come to the SNES Online.
Yeah, I was going to say, 3 I've also seen played, and I think you would really like the overworld of 3. It does some really cool stuff, and very neat in terms of that stuff. Obviously, you got Chunky Kong in there, so that's, take him or leave him, I guess. But I think 3 probably kind of tones things down a little bit from what I can recall.
Bloody hope it does. This was brutal.
Definitely.
If it's some difficulty between 1 and 2, that would be fine. Like one like the last levels of 1 are pretty damn hard in my view.
They're hard, they're definitely tricky.
Yeah, and this game starts beyond that level, and I was like, I am so not ready for this. Like, this is brutal. But yeah, that's DKC 2, so great fun. Would not recommend.
Well, send your hate mail in for Bally, because clearly, stepping on another sacred cow here. We just can't stop doing it, Bally. We just that's what this show is about.
Is DKC 2 a sacred cow?
I think it is for a lot of people. Yeah, for a lot of people, it's like the best DK games are Tropical Freeze and DKC 2 Like, that is kind of canonized.
Talk about those two games in the same sentence. God damn. I way prefer Return. I think Returns and 1 are maybe on a similar level to me, and obviously Freeze is the best.
Yeah.
But this is way below all 3 of those. Like, my God. Anyway.
Totally, yeah.
Rant over.
Rant over. But anyway, we'll continue to I'm sure, do some more ranting on the show. But that's the end of this segment for what we've been playing. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break talking about some of your emails. See you in a bit.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the second segment on today's show. It's time for the emails segment, but we do obviously have our Mario Sunshine celebration discussion next time. So we're looking for some emails about Mario Sunshine. We want thoughts, comments, really specific stuff. You know, we want the small stuff, the minutiae, if you might say. So please email ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com with your Mario Sunshine thoughts.
Someone has to say something nice about Mario Sunshine, Bally. It might as well be the listeners, you know?
I think we're going to get loads of positive emails about this truly great game.
Okay,
from our childhoods. Shall we get on to the first email for the segment?
Please do.
Ryan P. from the internet says, "Hey MZ and Bally, I've a podcasting question for you two. I decided to start my own podcast a couple months ago for fun. Shameless plug, the Ace Trainers Lounge, a semi-casual, semi-competitive Pokemon podcast, and have enjoyed doing so far as a solo podcast. I wanted to start having some friends come on as guest hosts, but I'm not sure the best way to record audio from multiple people when talking online. I use iMovie to put everything together, and it's easy enough when I only need to record myself. What do you use when podcasting to record each person's audio, and what do you use to stitch it all together? Any tips would be appreciated. Thanks for the great podcast, and keep up the great work, Ryan."
Great. Thanks, Ryan, for the question, and good luck with the podcast. It's a fun thing to do. It's even more fun with other people. I know some people who do solo podcasts, and it seems like a tricky thing to do. I've done it before. Like, there's been a segment of when Bally wasn't here, he was in Japan or something, I think, or you're on a holiday, and I did a Mario Odyssey segment just on my own, which I think I'm a bit more well attuned to, just because I'm very used to having talked to myself for YouTube videos for over a decade. But it's a hard thing, so keep at it, and it will be cool to get some friends on and do it. And this is an interesting time in which to ask us how we're recording, because my situation is a little weird at the moment because I'm away from my main setup, which is where I usually record, where I usually do most of the shows. But whenever I go anywhere, if I am recording being away, then I always bring my microphone with me. We both have different microphones that we use, but they're both, I believe, the same company. They're both Blue microphones, right?
Yes.
You've got a Blue as well, Bally.
Yes.
And Blue is probably the best, like, beginner, you know, semi-intermediate, but not really microphone. They're USB microphones, which means they plug into pretty much any computer, and they're very easy to use, and they're probably the best balance between cost and quality. You know, you get a pretty good sound from them, and they are not super expensive either. So Bally, what are you running?
I've got like the Blue Nessie microphone, and it's called Nessie because of its like it's got like a long neck and it's on a stand. It's like a fixed stand, which in hindsight isn't the best idea, because I think having a non-fixed microphone that you can attach to like an arm or its own stand might be a nice idea, and that's something I'd like to personally get in the future. But it works well. It's got like a silent mute button, which is a good thing to have on a podcasting mic, so I can mute myself without the click of a button. It's just a touch operated button in terms of sensitivity, which is quite useful, and it's got a jack so you can listen to your own audio as you're speaking. I think yours has that as well, MBZ. So
it does, yes, yeah. So mine is the Blue Yeti, which is probably the most popular like audio microphone device on the internet. Like, a lot of people you will see will just have a Yeti, right? Like, it's just a very reliable, very flexible one. I've had mine for a while now, and I feel like it should probably be upgraded, but it still sounds good. Still has a good kind of
we've been thinking about upgrading for a while. It's just a case of what to get and has.
The next step would be an XLR setup, which involves, you know, non-USB stuff and going into a mixer, and that is definitely it's another like cost-wise and quality-wise another step up. But I feel like at some point I'll figure out XLRs and get it all sorted. But we'll I mean, I'm sure that you probably have a good microphone just starting out, Ryan, but having your other friends have good microphones is the other thing, right? Because when me and Bally first started, we both had headset mics, and that's okay, that's fine, but I do go back to some of my old videos where I've made them with a headset mic, and listening to them now, sometimes the audio is only coming out of one ear because I haven't mixed it properly with stereo versus mono. Sometimes it's just really clippy, like very sharp. The audio is just horrible to listen to. And I think back then I didn't really consider a lot of that stuff, but nowadays I am very much an audiophile, and I do not like it when podcasts have bad audio. And there's lots of podcasts out there that basically just record Skype audio. And I get it, like, to some degree, because you just want something quick and easy, but Skype audio is really hard to edit because you only get a single track, which means that if 4 people are talking, it's really hard to cut things out because it's one contiguous file, versus what Bally and I do, which is we both record our audio separately from each other. So I record on my computer and he records on his computer. We both use Audacity, which is a free program, and loads of people use it. You know, even people who do this professionally still use Audacity because it's just a very, I mean, I wouldn't say reliable, because there are moments that it does bad stuff and freezes and crashes and all that nonsense, which you're probably going to get with a lot of these types of programs. You know, people pay.
You're going to want like other stuff on your computer closed, or, you know, stuff that takes.
It depends on what kind of computer you have, right? Because for me on my desktop, I can be playing Overwatch and also be recording at the same time for the most part and not have an issue. But when I'm on a laptop, it's a little bit up in the air because, you know, not as powerful, and sometimes resources will be taken from other things. But yeah, usually a good idea to shut a bunch of things down before you record so you don't run into those issues. But there are ways. There's some good tutorials on YouTube if your Audacity does crash, which I've had happen for Let's Play episodes in the past, where I've recorded an hour of a Let's Play session, which is like 6 videos, and then it just dies. And I learned that lesson very early. So I do have methods of recovering audio if Audacity does crash, which I don't think I've ever had to help you with that, Bally. That we've been fortunate in some senses there.
Yeah, I've had a few issues that I think have been caused by processing on my laptop, and to do with, you know, like too many things open and that sort of thing. But
yes,
it normally catches up itself. It's quite good at that. It's a good program generally.
I've been noticing recently when it freezes a little bit, I will say, okay, let's stop and let's clap again to resync, so that when I'm editing, I see, oh, this is where it got out of sync. Let me just quickly shuffle it back into sync again, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, the kind of the basics of it is, you know, have a decent microphone, like a Yeti or a Nessie if you want. I don't know if they sell the Nessie anymore, Bally. It was like a kind of special edition, like Scottish branded Yeti microphone, or blue microphone, I should say. And I guess they just named them after creatures, right? Yeti and Ness. I didn't even think about that.
Just like not mythical, like I guess mythical myths.
Pretty much, yeah. Beasts that maybe exist. The Bigfoot, yeah, stuff like that. Anyway, I think that's probably kind of the basics of it. And then in terms of editing, I mean, iMovie is a good way to start. You know, when I first started making YouTube videos, I used Windows Movie Maker, which doesn't really do the same thing anymore these days. But it used to be a pretty solid, just free program to use to edit stuff together. So I'm weird because I could use Audacity to edit it together, and Audacity is actually a pretty good option for using that, and I know multiple podcasts that do use it. I use Sony Vegas just because I learnt video editing on there, and I'm very fast at Sony Vegas, and I can just, usually for a 2-hour episode, I can cut it in around 1 hour and a half, maybe a bit less than that, like 1 hour 15, because I'm just like cutting like a madman. My fingers are like jammed into or like muscle memoried to the correct buttons to like cut pieces of audio and slide them and press play to keep playing and all that type of stuff. It's almost like this weird second nature thing to me now. But I do also use Adobe Premiere for work, so I am kind of in both camps. So it's been harder now because I've been doing, you know, video editing for work, and then that's tricky going back to Vegas, and I'm like, oh, I haven't used Vegas in a couple of weeks because, you know, I'm editing podcasts more rarely than I'm doing stuff for work, and so now I'm like pressing these buttons. I'm like, that's not how Vegas works anymore. So I'm getting a little bit messed up with the different programs I use. But yeah, even though those are both video programs, you can use them both for audio editing as well, and they work pretty well. The only issue is that, you know, they cost a fuckload of money. Sony Vegas is like 900 quid if you want to buy it. Obviously, when I was making Pokemon videos back in the day as a 14-year-old or 16-year-old or whatever I wasn't going to pay that amount of money. So, you know, maybe I found it some way via the internet. Who knows? I just, you know, stumbled upon a way somehow using the internet to get Sony Vegas. Hint, hint. So yes, you know, there are ways of doing that. But, you know, if you use Movie Maker or iMovie or whatever, that is perfectly a good way to start. And I would say don't like sweat it in terms of, you know, trying to have the best up-to-date programs and stuff like that until you've done a bit more and got it under your belt, because, you know, as long as it sounds decent and is good, then people will listen to it for the most part. But
yeah.
But yeah,
I use Final Cut Pro to edit, so I edit like the Patreon shows, and similar to you, MBZ, because I was trained to like video edit on Final Cut Pro. It's just easier to edit audio on there rather than like learning a new program. And
yes, exactly.
as expensive as Final Cut Pro is, I actually got it through my work at a previous job, and it's just stayed on my laptop.
And you still have the license, yeah.
On my Apple Apple laptop. So yeah,
That's what we should call them from now on. I refuse to call them Macs anymore. I'll now call them Lapples.
So yeah, it works well too. So yeah, it's all good, and yeah, it's editing together audio. I'm probably not quite as quick as you, MBZ, but I am getting much faster generally, and like
you do a really good job editing. Like it's often times that I will listen to shows and think, they should have cut this or this. Like, why did they not take that pause out or this weird stumbling thing that they could have got rid of? And I think maybe it's just because you've heard my shows being edited, and because you've been listening to them, you know what gets cut and what stays in and things like that.
Totally.
I think you definitely picked up very well with editing. So
just giving space to conversations when it's needed, and then I have long pauses when I'm just processing my thoughts that can sometimes be cut out, which is good. But yeah, you get used to it, and it's a good skill to have, because honestly, I think everyone's podcasting and video editing these days. It's useful to have. So totally.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if there's anything else to really add to that aside from
how do we talk to each other, MBZ? Because this is the most retro thing of our whole process.
Valley, don't fucking expose us.
So we currently talk to each other using Skype, and in defense of Skype, it's a lot less laggy than stuff like Discord and other online chat services that I think we've briefly tried in the past, right? And like, so
I don't know. I mean, I think Discord is fine. The problem I have with Discord is it fucking hijacks my audio and just does shit with it. You know, it takes it up and down when I don't want it to, because when you're this especially is another like very minutia point when you're recording, but your microphone, when you put it into the computer, has a set level at which it will intake audio. So it's like a value between 0 and 100. And my microphone is usually set to about 80. 80 is like a good range of, I can talk at a regular volume or a podcasting regular volume, which is slightly louder than when I regularly talk. And it will sound good and it will register correctly. And for the amount of decibels I'm putting in, it's giving out like a good amount of audio waves that aren't too loud, aren't too quiet, a good range. And what programs like Discord will do is they will take that audio on your desktop and just try and adjust it itself dependent on how quiet or loud you are talking. Yeah. And as a person, I have trained myself to talk at the same volume consistently, because that's what podcasting should be, because I get really annoyed. Easy Allies does this a lot. And I don't know, it's one of those things that annoys me the most in podcasting is people who will talk at different volume levels and then move away from the microphone, not realizing they're moving away from the microphone, and still talk at the same level. And then, it's hard to hear. And it means the person who's listening keeps having to adjust their audio up and down manually. And the best podcasts are the ones that don't do that. Either they use a system for compressing audio so that it is all equalized across the board, or you're someone, like us, who try and train themselves to talk at a consistent volume the whole time,
And you can actually like edit like the range inside Audacity, like to control your mic, as long as your computer's on the correct settings and it's not being overridden. So it's quite useful to control it within it. One important part of stitching audio together that we didn't mention is we have another retro way of doing it, where we basically just both do a 3-2-1 clap and clap at the same time, and then when you're in the edit, you just overlap the two spikes created by the claps.
A clap is really important because it will create a clean line in a WAV file, and so when you clap, you will see just a line that you can then line multiple lines up. So when you're doing your podcast, if you have 3 people, you take those 3 lines and you put them all together, and that will be your audio synced together in a very clean and easy fashion. It's very easy. So yeah, those are some top tips on how you make a podcast. It's obviously there's another aspect of it, which is like uploading it to the internet and figuring out, services and iTunes and all those other things. But yeah, that's kind of the meat and potatoes of how you do it with multiple people.
We're with Anchor now, aren't we? So
we are, yes.
You do all that uploading. Is that an easy process? Would you recommend Anchor?
It is now. Yeah, it is now. I think they kind of handle everything. It's free as well, so it's pretty good.
And they're pretty big and well resourced. We were with quite a small company
provider before,
right? And it was harder work, but we're all switched across now, which is good to good
to some degree. As painful as that entire fucking process was, yes, we're all sorted now.
So
great.
Top tip: get on Anchor or like a big provider because they have better support systems for when stuff goes bad. So yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That. Cool. Our next email is from Peter H, who's from Sweden and has a number of questions. Hello, TNL. I have some questions for you guys. First question, what kind of jobs do you guys have?
Do we want to do these one at a time then?
Sure. Yes, go one at a time.
Sure. I recently started working at a games publisher as a community manager. So I do a lot of social media stuff, making videos and making photos and stuff like that, as I was mentioning, editing stuff in Premiere and using Photoshop a bunch. And I'm learning a bunch of After Effects at the moment, which is like animation things that I've always kind of been interested in, but never actually dove into, because the problem with Premiere and the Creative Cloud is that it costs a lot of money every month to subscribe to it, but because it's part of my job now, I just get the Creative Cloud without having to pay for it. So in some senses, it's like, hey, I'm just kind of learning to do stuff that I wanted to do anyway, but it's also my job, so it's kind of cool. So yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment.
I'm currently working in communications for a Quango, so it's like a quasi-government organization, and the job of the organization I work for is funding education in Scotland. And when I say education, I mean higher and further education. So all of Scotland's colleges and universities and research centres are funded through the organization I work for, basically. And I'm responsible for videos and social media and press releases and internal communications and external communications and news stories, articles, that sort of thing. A lot of it's quite web-based. So
yeah. We both have similar-ish jobs, I guess, in terms of like, posting stuff on.
I mean, I'm not an expert in education. My skills in the writing the press releases, the videos, that kind of thing. So like, yeah, it's similar-ish. And like, I was working before in politics. So I worked for a member of the UK Parliament before in the constituency office, and before that I worked for a member of the European Parliament in Brussels. So those were very...
If you want to see Bally in a documentary, what was the name of that documentary?
Oh, good question. It's called like Anywhere But Brussels or something. It's a reference to some classic film title that I didn't know the name of, but yeah.
Oh, good.
I am in that documentary. So yeah, I was working in like communications and admin in Brussels, basically. And then my role was kind of communications researchy admin when I moved back to Scotland. And then again, I'm working in Edinburgh in this role. And let me tell you, it's a good time to be away from politics. I'm enjoying politics is really intense, and just I enjoy the pacing of my new job quite a lot more, which is good. And I've been in this job since just before lockdown. Actually, I was very lucky. Actually, it was in March, I want to say, I started.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I got this job during lockdown, which is even wilder.
Very wild.
Yeah, weird time we're in, but hey, there you go. That's a brief insight into what we do, I guess.
Yeah. Next question. I always play as Luigi when I can. Games such as Mario Party, Mario Tennis, Super Smash Brothers. If Luigi is a playable character, I play as him. What does that say about me?
Oh boy, we're talking about this, Bally, weren't we? Of like our weird gaming habits and the fact that you always had to play as Mario. And so I was forced to play as Luigi. But I think it's interesting for someone to like choose Luigi deliberately, right? Like,
Ali always chose Luigi deliberately with Mario Kart.
Do you think that's because he wanted to be tall when he was younger? Because he was really short, right? Ali T was short, and then he ended up being the tallest of the three of us, right? So it's like, is that like a wish fulfillment thing? Are we saying that Peter is short and therefore has wish fulfillment to be tall and therefore chooses Luigi?
Yeah, but maybe you'd go for Waluigi if that was the case. Who knows?
True. I don't know. Waluigi, I feel like there's other reasons you choose Waluigi, That's like chaos, right?
Right.
You have like a certain personality trope if you're going for Waluigi. But Luigi, I don't know, maybe it says that, you just want to give others the spotlight, right? You don't want to be in the spotlight. You just, you want to stay out of that, and you want to just chill on the sidelines. And it doesn't matter what Luigi does, except for the moments when you're really necessary, right? Because when you come in clutch, God damn, you come in clutch. Like in Luigi's Mansion, who else is going to save Mario from King Boo, right? It's Luigi. He's always there. He's always there to pick up the pieces. He's always, just kind of hanging about. And so I'd say, Peter, that so here's what we've got so far. You are short, wanting to be tall. You have a innate desire to not be in the spotlight, and you're dependable and reliable at every juncture. So I think we've got a good picture.
I'd agree with that. As someone who is quite tall, and I don't really care about my height personally, but I like being tall. I won't deny that. But also, I do like to be in the limelight. That's why I picked Mario. I love love my name in the title of the game. It's the best thing ever. I love it. It's my game. These are my tracks you're racing around right now. This is my Mushroom Kingdom. Back the hell off. I'm Mario. I'm vanilla, and you're all worse than me. That's how I feel when I'm playing Mario. So very
just egomaniacal, Bally.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that describes you perfectly. I would definitely say Bally's just an egomaniac who's only looking out for his best interests, really. So yeah, I think that's my philosophy on Luigi. I mean, I do like playing as Luigi. I think Luigi is also flavor, right? And you're vanilla. So Luigi has legs that just go and they just fucking wriggle. I will say, however, when it comes to Super Mario Brothers 2, you got to choose Princess Peach. She's just a better Luigi, right? Sure, Luigi can maybe go a little higher, but she just floats. She kind of does the same thing, but she doesn't. She has more the poise and control versus Luigi's kind of almost panic.
He's the skiddy movement. They have that in Galaxy, right?
Yeah, maybe that says another thing about Peter, that he's a bit nervous and a bit kind of panicky. Maybe that's Luigi's other kind of important aspect to him, which he is very scared in Luigi's Mansion, but he does push through it, right? So there's that resilience as well. So anyway, I hope we've psychoanalyzed you enough, and this is what happens if you decide that you are in fact Luigi, which you might be. I don't know.
Why does MBZ swear so much?
I don't fucking know. Yeah, it's weird. I think that it's ironic because...
You think he swears a lot now? You should see some of his old videos is the first point.
No. Oh, God. Yeah, there's definitely things I have taken out of my vocabulary because we don't use those words anymore. No, we do not. I think it stems from a desire to be emphatic, despite the fact that I pride myself on my vocabulary and my ability to be articulate and take words from different spaces and throw them in there and try and, be clever. I also like emphasis, and I like hammering home a point with a swear word for the most part. When I am angry or want to convey something about how Mario Sunshine sucks, for example, just an example, not indicating any future episode of this show or anything, but maybe I might swear on that episode about Mario Sunshine in reference to a certain shine. Who knows? That's why, I think.
Just one shine. Just one.
Yeah. Oh, just one. Yeah, no, all the rest are fine.
Yeah.
I think that's the main reason that I do it on the show, but there's also a sense of it's just part of the way I speak regularly to myself, or just, it depends, right? Because there's certain places, like in the workplace or, around family, extended family members, where I won't. Whereas in my own family, kind of close family, just the four of us, my parents and my sister, we all swear all the time at each other constantly. It's very weird because I don't think we grew up like that, and then we kind of hit a certain point.
There was just a point, it just all came out.
There was a point in our teenage years where my parents were like, whatever, and we were like, whatever, so we just all swear a bunch.
We're getting away with it now.
But now it doesn't matter. My parents will swear all the time, and I don't think of it as weird. I guess it's just one of those things. Some families obviously will feel very differently about it, and they will grow, have their children raised in a way where they don't want them to swear, and they will not allow it in the household. And I think my parents were like that when we were younger, but when you pass a certain threshold, then you're like, whatever, just that's how we talk now. And it's kind of bad, I guess, especially because, as I said, I am someone who I like to think that I know a bunch of words and I like to say them out loud, and I could use those in a more, smart fashion to make my points a bit better, more coherent, more emphatic, and yet you just sometimes you just need a good fuck in there, you know? You just need to say it because it feels good and it's like a punch, right? It's like punching something.
I think swearing and video games go hand in hand quite well, actually.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's not like, say we did like a film podcast. Sure, we'd probably swear, but it's like there's something about the frustration of Mario Karts and Smash Brothers and Overwatch and stuff. It's like, God damn, makes you want to swear. Like,
yeah, it's the pent up anger, you know, and it's just like a burst almost. It is like an expulsion of air that vents a frustration or does something along those lines. And yeah, so I guess that's why, if you want to go into again, we're just doing lots of psychoanalysis of people today, Bally, first Peter and now myself.
On a different plane.
Exactly, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I tend to swear less on the show. I don't know, I try and keep it like, I mean, I swear more off the show, totally. But for some reason on the show, I'm like, no, I'm going to keep it. I don't
PG.
know. Sorry?
Keep it PG.
Keep it PG. I think it also works well where, you know, our co-host dynamic, you're like the loudest, swearier one, and I'm the more like,
I'm chill one.
I'm the chill, mellow joke cracker at the side, you know, whereas you're I'm the main presenter and I'm loud and I swear, and I'm like, I'm the quieter one.
I basically do the swearing for both of us. I just carry the weight,
exactly.
You know?
Yeah. But then when I do swear, which happens occasionally on the show, it's like, whoa, emphasis.
Bally swore?
Bally
oh
swore,
my goodness.
it's like a big moment. Yes. I'm really frustrated with that game, and I just had to get out the F word.
You got to save those important moments, Bally, because
right.
When I swear, it just doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just
so it's like it's that balance. I think it's good for the podcast where one's more sweary than the other. Let's just say.
Sure, absolutely.
But anyway,
cool.
That's all the emails we've got this time on the show. But as I said at the top of the segment, we're talking about Mario Sunshine next time, and we want your thoughts on it. So please send your emails to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That's ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We really want your thoughts. We hope you've been playing it. We hope you've been enjoying it. And we're going to talk about it next time.
Do we?
Yeah, well, I've been having a great time. But more of that later. But anyway, on to the third segment where we're going to be talking about some of the news that's been going on. And we will be right back.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the third and final part of the show. It's time for news and reviews. No, a second one that's not actually. It's just news, only news. And Nintendo had done a thing. It called a Nintendo Partner Showcase, and they just dropped it on. I think we were both working, and it was just like I was looking at Twitter.
Is this like the sixth one at this stage?
It's a lot. They've done a lot. They've been doing like one a month for a little while
every
now.
2 weeks or so.
And they have tended to be like, don't expect much from this shit. It's like, here's the WWE game that no one gives a shit about. And yeah, stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, we were both working, and I was like, what the fuck, Bally? It's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, they just dropped a direct mini out of nowhere. Yeah, we watched it. And it had some cool stuff in it. So let's run through and talk about some of these things, because they did say this was going to be the last Nintendo Partner Showcase of 2020, which I guess that's very specific in that could leave the door open for another Nintendo Direct or a specific game Direct, like they tend to do. But specifically for these partner showcases, this is going to be the last one. And there were some few things in there that were pretty neat. So let's kick it off with Bravely Default 2. A game that I think we're both not that hot on after that demo. It's kind of like, there's a thing that happens with demos. Either you're an Octopath Traveler demo or a Bravely Default 2 demo. It's ironic that they both came from the same studio because, boy, I did not like that game at all, and I am not interested in it now.
And both of them, they did this kind of like feedback session from the demo. So people could feedback how they felt about Bravely Default 2, and I know that they did a video following up with like some things that they're going to change.
Yeah, which I haven't watched yet. I haven't got to that.
Yeah, I've not watched it either. So I'd be keen to watch that. Not that I am excited, because as you say, from the demo, I was like, I do not like this. This is as far from Octopath as like possible. I thought it would be much more similar, but it didn't feel that way. So yeah, and they always said this game was going to be 2020, and then at the last minute, they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be like February next year, right? So
yeah, exactly. So it's delayed into next year, but hey, I mean, they did show off some neat stuff, some new character classes, and just told like, hey, we're changing some things. So I think they showed difficulty, not slider, but like different difficulty levels and different things about like movement and those different aspects that they're kind of digging into and wanting to change potentially. So we'll see how it goes. I'll keep an eye on it, but I think I'm probably more likely to go back to the 3DS games at this point and play one of the original ones rather than the aptly named Bravely Default 2. It's like, it wouldn't be a Square Enix name if it didn't make any fucking sense, It's like, what are they going to call the sequel to this? Bravely Second 2? Like, I mean, come on, Square Enix, get your act together. Then we saw a Story of Seasons, which looked pretty neat. This is obviously the true Harvest Moon successor, because the other one, owned I think by Natsume now, and this has to be called, is actually called Harvest Moon, but isn't made by the people who made Harvest Moon. It's a whole mess. But it looks neat. Like, there's lots of these Stardew-style games on Switch at this point in time. You've got stuff like My Time at Portia. You've got stuff like Summer in Mara. A lot of those games kind of 3D with really bad frame rate and don't really run that well. But this one looks a bit more pared down. Like, it seems like the type of game that actually will run quite nicely. The other one I've had my eye on for a while is that Doraemon game, Doraemon Story of Seasons.
Yeah, that one looks like it's got a real polish to it.
Definitely, yeah. So that's the one I'm probably the most interested in out of all of these ones, but there are a lot of them now. So I don't know how this one's going to do, but it definitely looks neat, and maybe a little bit more simplistic from an art style perspective, but maybe that will help it to not run like garbage on the system. So we'll have to wait and see. Surviving the Aftermath. So this, it was kind of like more of a tone piece, I would say, than a trailer, and I think it's more of a kind of CRPG style game. Felt kind of wastelandish, but I don't have many thoughts on that, so we didn't really see much of it. And then they showed Immortals Phoenix Rising, which was coming to Switch, that we had known about for a while. We just hadn't seen what it looked like, and now we get to see what it looks like. And oh boy, Switch version not looking super hot. I'll be honest, it's definitely very clearly one of those types of games that is designed first and foremost for the HD twins, and then they're like, the Switch gets a version, we'll just make it a bit more simpler and take out some polygons, and I don't know, like I'm sure it'll run okay, but
I mean, it is unusual for Ubisoft to be like, here's a Switch version. We've not seen that with many of their bigger games. I mean,
I think in this case, it's definitely obvious they were going to do it because, number one, it's a more cartoony art style that leans into the Switch's strengths a bit more. It means it's not trying to do the Assassin's Creed thing where like toning that down looks a lot worse. And number two, it's basically just ripping off Breath of the Wild. And so obviously you're going to go to the system where all those players are, right? Like that's kind of, you want to leverage that fan base as much as humanly possible, which makes a lot of sense, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this year, the best-selling version of that game was the Switch version, despite the fact that visually it definitely doesn't quite hold up to scrutiny in the same way as those other versions do. But it's definitely a game I'm still curious about. And, you know, despite the fact that it doesn't look as nice, you know, in handheld mode, you're not going to notice that stuff as much. And hopefully it does run nicely and look good. So in that format at the very least, because yeah, it's one that I will potentially pick up. Maybe not this year, but I can foresee myself playing this as someone who has played a bunch of Genshin Impact and is like, you know what, this Breath of the Wild stuff still works in other games. Definitely has my kind of my eye on it a little bit. So cool stuff. Then our favorite franchise is back, Bally. It's Bakugan, Champions of Vestroya. Hell yeah! Shouts to Bakugan.
It didn't quite have the build up that it did last time.
It didn't. It didn't have, the big splash, but I don't know. Do we know? Do you know what Bakugan is, Bally? Have you figured it out yet? Does any of us know?
No.
Is it just like a Pokemon ripoff? Is that what it is? I guess.
Maybe.
It feels like a monster collecting style thing. It feels like the type of thing, right, that would have been popping in the 90s where everything was ripping off Pokemon, but like we're many years removed from that, but somehow it's still chugging along. I don't know. Anyway, so then they did a bit of a kind of quick run through of some different games, and one of them was Griftlands. I don't know if you've heard much about Griftlands, Bally, but
no.
So this is by Clay Entertainment, who made a bunch of different games, obviously. They've worked on Shank, Don't Starve is their big hit, Mark of the Ninja, of course, my favorite Clay game, as well as Invisible Inc., Austin Walker's big filibuster for Giant Bomb's Game of the Year back in the day, and a bunch of other stuff that is really cool. They have a very distinctive art style, but Griftlands is basically a Slay the Spire style game, but done with a lot of conversation stuff. So it's kind of, in some senses, similar to Signs of the Sojourner, which I played earlier this year, with more Slay the Spire stylings. And people have been going wild about that game. It's only in early access at the moment, but I am waiting for the full release because that game seems like it is incredibly good. So keep an eye out for Griftlands, and it coming to Switch, hopefully day one, is, that'd be great, because I think, Hades early access and then was like Switch in its full release was a great idea. Same with Dead Cells. And I think these early access games that build a lot of word of mouth and then drop day one on Switch, usually a good combination. So,
right.
Yes, keep an eye out for Griftlands. Tropico 6, fuck me, Bally. Do you remember watching this? And like these types of games on Switch, there are so many of them.
There's
like
loads.
the like Civ style.
Caroline played 2 Point Hospital this year, and she really enjoyed it, but like it looked like it ran so badly, and that game crashed on her almost every other day or something. And like it was bad.
Wow.
And yeah, there's a lot of those types of games on Switch though, like all the tycoon-esque games, and yeah. Tropica. It
just looks like fucking garbage. Oh my goodness.
I don't have a gaming PC, but I mean, you need that to do it.
It's just like it's almost embarrassing. Like it's almost to the point of like, are you not embarrassed to ship this product? Because this looks like literal trash. Like, I'm sorry, like not to be mean about it, but like,
I mean, they must be selling some sort of numbers because they just keep coming, like
yeah,
it's not
like they put City Skylines on there, and it's like, this looks terrible. Like, who's gonna play this? But I mean, I guess like there's a market there for people who just don't own these other systems, who want to play these style of games, and for whatever reason they keep coming.
These games are like a big reason you would get a gaming PC, because they are so unique to that system. It seems trying to play them on console, let alone like a Switch, is just
the most underpowered console of them all. Yeah,
it seems crazy, but I guess there's people out there.
And then some big news, kind of, I guess. We're getting cloud versions in the West, Bally. So Bally, why am I saying? Nintendo, yes, Bally, the owner of the company. So
me.
Nintendo in Japan have been, they've been trying this thing where they put out a game that is on much more powerful hardware, but they run it through a cloud service. So Resident Evil 7 did this. Assassin's Creed Odyssey did this, where you could basically buy a digital cloud only, like Stadia-esque thing, and you could play it on your Switch. And so there's footage out there of those games, and it was kind of, I guess, like an experiment, a test to see how these things did. And now they have brought them to us, to everyone else in the rest of the world, with 2 games. So we've got Hitman 3, which is coming out next year, I guess alongside the full release of that game.
That seems like the bigger announcement, actually, because that's like a new game that
exactly
is going to come to like next generation consoles, right?
Right, a brand new thing, which is definitely, hopefully, going to be pretty good. And I actually was kind of tricked by this because I was like, oh, Hitman's one of those games I look at and I'm like, yeah, you could probably run the original Hitman on Switch. But then it was Hitman 3 and I was like, well, how are they going to do this? And it turns out that's the way. They're doing cloud versions of both of them. By both of them, I mean the other game, which is Control, which was shadow dropped on the day. It was like, anyway, here it is. You can check it out, which I think was a pretty clever move because it meant that anyone who had a Switch could just download this quote-unquote demo, which was about 5 to 10 minutes long, and it let you test out to see if your internet could hold up with these cloud versions, which I think is very important, right? You can't go sight unseen into these things and just like buy them straight out, not knowing whether your internet can handle them or not. So I downloaded the Control thing just to test it out and see how it was going. So the first thing was weird was I had to wait in a queue and it was like 800 people. And I was like, okay,
the
this
queue
is
was huge because everyone had just seen the damn mini direct thing.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So everyone was trying to get on it. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just leave this while I work on the side and just wait for it to load up. And then my Switch went to sleep and I opened it and I was like, fuck, I got kicked off the list. So I went back to like number 800 in the queue and just...
The Switch isn't really designed for this necessarily.
No, it's not for sitting there and doing nothing because it turns itself off and, wants to preserve power, which is admirable. But, sometimes Switch just want you to sit there and stay on. But I did eventually get in and... I was kind of blown away by it in the sense that I have really had poor experiences with streaming stuff in the past. Played a bunch of Stadia, and that does not work for me at all. I've played a little bit of Immortals Phoenix Rising because there was a Stadia demo that you could just go and play. Yeah. You click it from the browser. And to Stadia's credit, holy shit, like... You just click a button and you're in and you're playing, and my Xbox controller worked with it and it was working. The problem is it's just a terrible experience. Like artifacting to hell, laggy, like very, I wouldn't say glitchy, I would say hitchy is the word for it, which is like, it made me motion sick playing that game over Stadia. And I think that's the inherent drawback of those services. And yet, playing Control in performance mode on Switch, it was like running at a smooth 60. The latency was almost barely noticeable. It ran shockingly well. And I don't know, like putting it on the TV, whether it would hold up as good as it did on the Switch screen, just because, it's much easier to see that artifacting stuff when it's blown up on a larger display versus just seeing it handheld. But playing it handheld, I was like, man, this kind of works. It's kind of crazy. And so the company is, I think Ubitus is their name, and they seems to be doing a bunch of these in the future. I think there was a bit of a leak from the eShop saying that Resident Evil 3, the new one, the remake that came out earlier this year, is going to get a cloud version on Switch as well. So yeah, if this is the future, if we talk a lot about, do Nintendo do a pro Switch so that they can keep up with all the big games coming out? And I wonder how well...
It's a good workaround, isn't it?
Yeah, I do wonder how well these cloud versions do for companies and whether it is worth them just doing this instead. Because it seems like a lot less work and maybe, just as good sales from these. Obviously, it will vary where you are. Some people just straight up will not be able to play games this way. But I don't know, maybe at some point, if there's a big, deep sale on it, I might just pick it up because... Given my internet situation, it works really, really well.
It'd be interesting, though. If you say you only owned a Switch, would you rather play Witcher 3 through cloud gaming, or would you rather play the Nintendo Switch version of Witcher 3, knowing that version probably took considerably more development time than the Nintendo Switch Control play on cloud version, right? So
yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, with The Witcher 3, you can play it in a car, right? Like, that's the benefit. You can take it on a plane. You can be at the beach,
Right. Cloud gaming limits you to internet connection.
Exactly. So it is one of those restrictions, which I'm sure we will eventually bypass those barriers in the future because internet will eventually just be everywhere. But at the moment, not quite there. However, I give it a pretty strong endorsement, honestly. I only played it for about 5-10 minutes and I didn't manage to get into any gunplay, so I don't know like how that works and how it feels and stuff like that. But just moving the character.
But you did some good running around.
Yeah, it's a good run around. The run around pretty good in this game on the cloud version. So if you haven't tried it, I would say, and you as well, Bally, just like download it and give it a run through and see how it looks. Because I'd be interested, especially if you put it on your TV and see how it runs there as well. That'd be pretty cool. No more heroes. Travis Touchdown is back, Bally. He's in town, and it's time for people to catch up on the series. I played both the first 2 games on Wii. They're great games. They're really weird. They have that like Suda51, just reverent humor. And I like this series a lot. I think it's really cool. And the third game is coming next year. Now, obviously, it's been delayed and it is not coming out anytime soon. But they have ported the first 2 games to Switch, which is great. And I've asked some people on Twitter, are these versions good? And the replies I've got were like, this is like the best versions of the game. They run perfectly. I think there's motion control stuff built in there as well. You can play it handheld too. It just seems like a really good way to catch up before the third game comes out, right? Like it's kind of what we're kind of hoping before Metro Prime 4 happens is like put out that trilogy so people can catch up. And it's great. It's a nice little stopgap, and they launched on that day. So they're available right now. Check out that series if you haven't already. I'm a big fan of it. I like it a lot. Part-Time UFO. So this is a kind of a very small game that HAL made a while ago, a couple of years ago. They put it out on mobile, and they have now brought it to Switch, which I'm much more amenable to play this type of game on a console. And it looks very cute. I like it from a kind of visual perspective, and I would like to pick it up at some point. I think it's a little pricey just because the mobile version is literally half the price of it, and obviously that's just because of the market and stuff like that, but it does annoy me a tinge when that stuff happens, where it's like, it's literally the same game, it's like, except for the fact I have real controls, but you're charging me double for it, because being the console audience, the market knows that we are just more likely to spend more money on a video game than someone on a phone is.
Apparently it's only like a 3-hour game as well, so like...
Yeah, it's really short, and doesn't have much to it, but
then again, like these other indie games on Switch are right up at like 18, 22 quid. Like that Switch tax, it's brutal. It's high.
It's high. But are you interested in this at all, Bally, picking this up at some point?
Yeah, definitely. Loved a bit of Box Boy. I mean, I didn't keep up with every single other Box Boy, but I like HAL are just a really like clean, crisp little studio that do some cool things, and I
do like that they make these really small projects, like, because there aren't enough of Nintendo studios doing that. They're one of the rare kind of part of Nintendo's portfolio who are actually doing like small eShop style games like this. We answered an email about this on the last episode, but like, hey, this is exactly the type of 3DS style game that people, I guess, don't expect to be on the system anymore. And here it is. Part-Time UFO is totally that style of game, which is very, very neat. And then Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, where they showed off, the big divine beast just crashing through things, smashing things up. And we talked about that in the first segment. So
did we ever think a Breath of the Wild Muso game would be Nintendo's big Christmas game?
I mean, Bally, at one point in time, their big Christmas game was like the most pared back Mario Tennis I've ever seen, and an Animal Crossing board game that had no mechanics.
True. I mean, I'm sure once upon a time their Christmas game for 2020 was going to be Breath of the Wild 2, but instead they've given us Breath of the Wild Muso, so that feels like a bit of a step down. But it's
slightly a step down, but hey, that's how it goes. And there were a couple of other things shown off in the Japanese Direct. Rune Factory 5 got a bit of a spotlight, and like talking about how games have evolved, like compare what Rune Factory 4 looked like to what this looks like. It's kind of night and day. It's crazy. It looks really, really nice. And that's definitely one I'm keeping an eye out on. Similar to Story of Seasons, I guess. But I think Rune Factory appeals to me a bit more at this point in time, just because it's got kind of RPG stylings to it, but a dungeon crawling. Stardew meddled with some of that, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that was the partner showcase. Overall thoughts, Bally, on it? For me, this was maybe probably the strongest one of these. Not that the bar was particularly high, but just some neat stuff going on here.
Yeah, just neat stuff, and I'm glad that they just dropped it. It's not this build up. I think they're getting better at kind of anticipating what the hype is around certain announcements, certain things, and just drop it. 15 minutes of announcements and little things to keep everything ticking between now and first quarter of 2021. And there's some good stuff in there, as much as I'm not personally hyped for a lot of it, but just even little things like Part-Time UFO just looks great. I want to try that. It looks awesome.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, the other thing that happened was there's a bunch of new sales data came out regarding Nintendo and the Switch and stuff like that. So we're up to, I believe, 68 million units of Switch worldwide, which is quite high. I believe 3DS...
This is the second most successful Nintendo home console ever.
Yes. Behind the Wii. So we have passed NES at this point in time, which is pretty impressive. If you want to talk about it as a home console, right, which to some degree, like, I think a lot of people look at it as a handheld, and like, if we're comparing it to handheld numbers, we're kind of pushing up to 3DS sales at this point in time, right? Like, this is where the 3DS kind of petered out around 70 million, and it doesn't look like the Switch is slowing down,
trucking.
right? It's trucking on. We're only 3 years into this, and the fact that it is almost at 70 million 3 years in, like, this is going to hit 100 million, no problem. Like, this is on track to be Nintendo's best-selling home console of all time. Of course, we have to caveat, it is also a handheld, so like Nintendo's bar is very high with that, just because you got Game Boy up there, you've got DS at 150 million, so I'm not sure many pieces of hardware will ever hit the heights of the PS2 and the DS, because they're just so astronomically higher than everything else, but Switch is definitely on pace to keep going, and I guess it depends on if they do a hardware refresh next year and how much longer of a lifespan that gives it, and kind of where it goes. But yeah, it's impressive. Are you surprised by this, Bally? Did you think it would get here this quickly? Like, I think the Switch sales numbers generally have been astonishing across a lot of different areas, but people. Maybe the pandemic obviously has had a lot to do with it. They sold almost 7 million in the last quarter, which is a lot.
I just think after the first year and a half, like, this was the trajectory it was on. Like, it was just like, and it's kept pumping out big hits every year. Not like necessarily in terms of quantity, but like in terms of like a hit a year. Like, Animal Crossing is obviously huge, and we're about to talk about software, but like, I do genuinely think it's the software driving a lot of those sales out. There's different groups coming on, whether they're wanting their Mario Kart or their Animal Crossing or their Pokemon, like all those, or Smash Brothers, like Splatoon, all those games are now on the Switch. And when you're talking about Nintendo's biggest mainstream system seller style of games, they've already ticked most boxes, and I think that's probably what's driving this the most.
Yeah, totally. Like, Animal Crossing at 26 million, almost, at this point, is the second best-selling game behind...
Apparently that's higher than any other single Sony first-party game ever. Like, it's already bigger than any of those.
Wild, man. Fucking wild. Yeah, it's catching up to Mario Kart 8, which I thought was the unassailable king,
And it's done it in a year.
It's done it.
Can it catch Mario Kart in a year?
Less than a year. It came out in March, Bally, the end of March, for God's sake.
It's going to catch it. We've got Christmas coming. Like, that's going to be a hot present, and it's going to overtake. It's going to get to like 30 this year. Come on, like, look at it.
I think both these games could definitely, Mario Kart and Animal Crossing could both pass 30 million. And like, when you're talking 30 million, that's like New Super Mario Brothers Wii territory. That's a lot of fucking copies, So we'll see, but Jesus, that thing is going crazy. Obviously, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, it's their time-limited thing, certainly hasn't phased a lot of people because of 5.21 million units sold as of September 30th, which I'm sure that is way higher now. It's a good month and a half almost past that date at this point. So, I could see it being 8 million, 10 million by the end of the year, no question. It's a very appealing package for a lot of people. Very nostalgia hitting, especially when you think about like the demographic who have picked up a Switch. A lot of kind of people of our age, I guess, who had fallen out of games for a while. A lot of those people probably grew up with Mario 64 and Sunshine, and now are very nostalgic for them. So I'm not really surprised that it's done very well. I just I wonder, when they see sales numbers like this, do they think, maybe we should keep selling this? Like, it's a little weird, right? Like, why would you take away such a strong revenue generator when it clearly is one of those titles that, similar to even Odyssey, just could keep going, right? Like, you can see this as a title that can just keep selling and selling. So
will they change their mind before March? you calling it?
Are we going to put a bet on this, Bally? What's the bet? What are the stakes of the bet? Are you putting your money on it?
So there's 3 titles that are currently time limited, right? We discussed this last time.
Yes.
So you got your Fire Emblem, your Mario
3D
3D collection, and your Mario 35, whatever it's called. Yeah. How many of them no longer become time limited?
I think 3D All Stars is the one that changes, because I think those other two are like small fish. They're real small fish, you know?
They really are small fish, but I think because of the nature of what it is, I think Mario 35 might just keep going. Because once you have a group who are into it, and I'm not sure how large or niche that group necessarily is, I'm sure they exist, but once you have that group going, it will just completely kill all momentum for eternity if you suddenly get rid of it, maybe. Like, I feel like that one would continue as well. So I'd even go for all 3 will be extended, honestly, just because. Whatever.
Yeah. I don't think Fire Emblem will. Fire Emblem to me speaks of a very hardcore fan base, a very niche set of people.
It's the one they can get away with the most, maybe.
For sure. Yeah. But my goodness, this thing is selling like hotcakes. Nintendo, what are you doing? You're lunatics. Anyway, Paper Mario also almost at 3 million, which I believe that puts it like up there with the best-selling Paper Mario games. Probably like just behind Sticker Star at this point in time, but I'm sure it will pass it. It's definitely a much better game than Sticker Star was. And also Fire Emblem Three Houses has passed 3 million units, which is great. That is really cool. I was thinking about going back to that game because I still have a couple of routes to finish off, and with all the DLC that's been added now, some new characters will be able to be recruited as I go through those routes, so bit more incentive for me to go back there and clear it out. So I think I'll do that at some point. But yeah, overall, I think it's just, you know, it continues to, I don't think there's anything unique or new we can really say about it. It's like, yeah, hey, they're doing well. And despite the fact that this year has been rough, to put it very lightly, if you're a Nintendo fan, you know, they had Animal Crossing. That's all they really needed. You know, 26 fucking million copies.
Yeah, financially, I think they're ticking all the boxes. It's just that if there are a lot of big Nintendo fans out there who aren't that into Animal Crossing, and I think it's been a real rough time for them, like waiting for something big. And maybe they're a big Hyrule Warriors fan. I don't know, but maybe if they're waiting for something a little more top tier in Nintendo's catalog, that it's been a bit of a quiet year, especially in comparison to the last 3 years, perhaps. But I think there will be great stuff in 2021, and it's just a matter of time of waiting it out, seeing what happens. And I think I said before, but I think Nintendo are happy to just have a low profile for 3 or 4 months with their existing software, while I'm sure lots of people are keen on these new consoles, as much as I don't think their audiences overlap a tremendous amount.
I wonder how many copies of Mario Kart Live get sold this Christmas. You know, that seems like one that could juice their revenues as well. Definitely, you know, pricey to get in, but I think quite an appealing toy, I guess, for that market.
Oh yeah, I mean, we would have been so wild for that thing when
holy
we
shit,
were like
dude,
12, 13. My
absolutely,
God,
we would have just raced those around houses non-stop like crazy people. Fantastic. Well, that's probably going to close us out for the segment, and that is going to close us out for the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Of course, do not forget, next time, the reckoning is here. Super Mario Sunshine. We shall litigate it. We shall discuss it. We shall venerate it. And we shall get into the deep, dirty, nasty details, if you would like.
We shall praise it.
Yeah, I mean, I have I have 2 mandated pieces of praise I must give to Mario Sunshine as per the stream. I should probably just shout it out. I will be streaming more of Mario Sunshine. If you would like to watch the torture, head over to twitch.tv/LordNBZ.
It's a very good streaming game. We've said this before, but it's I think it's a very entertaining like game to watch NBZ torture himself with. As much as Twitch doesn't want to call it a torture chamber, it knows what it's doing.
Yes, if I'm going to say something definitive about Mario Sunshine being the best at something, it is the best 3D Mario game to stream. I'm telling you that. Yes, it is. It's I don't know.
Those floodless levels are just great. They're just so like, right, here's a challenge, do it. I love that.
Yes. So please send your emails and go to Discord. Send your thoughts about Super Mario Sunshine to the show so that we can bring them in and, you know, have a nice balance of thoughts about this video game. So Bally, where can they send them?
Please send your emails to ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. That is ThisNintendoLife@gmail.com. We would hugely appreciate some thoughts, some comments, some criticisms of what is otherwise a celebration of Mario Sunshine.
Indeed. Great. You can also find the show in various places. We're all over the internet. We're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, we're on TuneIn, we're on all the hot podcasting apps. Just search for This Nintendo Life. Subscribe to us, review us on iTunes, all those good things. That would be marvelous. We also would like to thank some people who make the show possible and some extra shows possible. Those are our patrons, of course, Bally. Who do we have to thank today?
Yes, thank you to our $10 tier patrons. They are Zach S, Atari Alex, Thomas, Matthew, and my fiancée Caroline. Thank you for your support. And yeah, if you don't know, we do a Patreon show at This Nintendo Life where we talk about all things Nintendo. And we put out one episode a month, and you can listen to that episode for $1 a month. So yeah, go on over there to Patreon. We've got some other tiers that you might be interested in, and it's a good time, especially in this month. There's a little thing called the PlayStation 5 coming out, which I might be getting on day one. So we'll be talking a lot about that in depth this month over on that show.
Yeah, I'm going to grill Bally on whether he understands what ray tracing is. So look forward to that. Yes, patreon.com/ThisNintendoLife for all of that stuff. And yeah, you can find us in the various places on the internet as well. You can follow the show on Twitter at TNL Podcast. That's at TNL Podcast for updates about what we are doing. You can follow me at Lord NBZ. Bally, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91. And yeah, I promise to stop tweeting about politics for a little while.
Yes, a little bit of a calm now that the storm is over. Absolutely. Cool.
We hope the storm is over.
Oh, don't get me started. Yes, that will that'll pretty much close us out for the episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope things are doing all right. And, there's lockdowns happening again in various places. So stick in there. We'll keep being here to keep you distracted and, thinking about video games. So, yeah, that's going to close us. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you very soon. Until next time, bye-bye. The musical interludes used on today's show were the main theme from Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, copyright Nintendo 2020, and Stickerbrush Symphony from Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kongquest, copyright Nintendo 1995.